The mansion sat like a silent god at the edge of the city, its massive iron gates towering over the poverty-stricken neighborhood surrounding it. Inside those gates, time obeyed a different rhythm. Everything was spotless, silent, and cold. And at the heart of it all was Mr. Chuka Anansi, the reclusive billionaire known for his emotionless stare, calculated decisions, and complete detachment from human connection. They called him the Ice King in Lagos business circles. He never smiled, never flinched, never forgave. People said he hadn't cried since his mother's funeral, at age 10. But one ordinary Tuesday morning, something shattered that icy composure forever. It was supposed to be just another routine day. Until he walked into the hallway and saw her dancing. And from that moment, nothing, absolutely nothing, was ever the same again. The girl's name was Adama. Barely 22, she had come from the village of Nsukka to work as a housemaid in the Anansi mansion. Her mother was sick, her siblings starving, and her father long gone. She needed this job, no matter how cold or cruel the environment. The mansion had a code of silence. No laughter. No music. No personal effects. Mr. Anansi did not tolerate noise or emotional nonsense, as he called it. Even the birds outside seemed to respect his rules, their chirps softening whenever he passed. But Adama had music inside her. She didn't need a speaker. She had her memories. Every morning, after scrubbing the floors and polishing the windows, she would sneak into the empty corridor outside the ballroom, the one place cameras didn't reach, and dance. Barefoot. Eyes closed. Movements fluid like silk, pain transforming into grace with every motion. Dancing was her rebellion. Her survival. Her soul trying not to vanish in a world too hard, too cruel. She never imagined anyone would see her. She was careful. She was invisible. That was the rule of survival for a maid in the Anansi mansion. But fate doesn't knock. It barges in. It happened on a Wednesday morning. Chuka Anansi had returned from London a day earlier than expected. His business deal had fallen through. He was furious. Restless. Instead of going to his office, he took a detour through the mansion to clear his head. As he passed the marble corridor, he heard something. Not sound, exactly, but a rhythm. A pulse in the air. Then he saw her. Adama was dancing. Spinning. Her body arching like a question mark toward the ceiling. Her face, smiling. And for a moment, just a moment, Chuka forgot to breathe. He stood frozen, watching as the girl moved like wind over water. Not for money. Not for a man. Not for attention. But for herself. When she finally noticed him, she gasped and stumbled back, her eyes wide with terror. Her job, her life, everything was over. She fell to her knees. "I'm sorry, sir, please. I didn't mean." Chuka didn't speak. He stared at her like she was something he couldn't quite understand, like a language he'd never learned. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. That should have been the end. She waited to be fired that day. And the next. And the next. But no message came. She was ignored. Not punished. Not acknowledged. Nothing. Until 2 weeks later, when something unthinkable happened. One evening, the mansion staff were summoned to the Great Hall. This had never happened before. When they arrived, they found Mr. Anansi seated like a statue in his leather armchair. He was flanked by 2 assistants, his personal lawyer, and a notepad. He looked at Adama. Only her. "You," he said quietly. "Do you know how to teach dance?" Her throat dried. I don't know, sir. I've never taught. I only. You will now. Starting next Monday, you are to teach dance to the children at the orphanage I sponsor in Ajagunal. Every Friday, I want a report. The staff gasped. Some exchanged suspicious glances. Was this a test? A trap? But it wasn't. That Monday, a black car with tinted windows picked Adama up and drove her to the orphanage. And there, for the first time in years, she saw what joy looked like. Children with dusty feet and hollow stomachs laughed as she moved. They copied her rhythm, stumbled, fell, then rose again. And danced. Mr. Annesley never showed up. But the funding increased. New shoes arrived. A dance studio was built. The media eventually caught on. Billionaire funds dance outreach for poor youth, the headline said. Everyone praised him. But no one really knew why. Until one night, 6 months later, Adama was called to the study. She entered cautiously. The room was dimly lit, lined with books, and heavy with silence. Chuka sat by the fireplace, a tumbler of whiskey in hand. He didn't look at her when he spoke. My sister loved to dance, he said quietly. I used to watch her. Until my father caught her one day and broke her leg with a belt. Said dancing was for prostitutes. Adama felt her breath catch. She never danced again, he continued. And 2 years later, she hung herself. Silence. I hated dance ever since. I hated people who smiled. I hated softness. I thought, if I stayed cold enough, I'd never feel that kind of pain again. His voice trembled for the first time. But then I saw you. She said nothing. What was there to say? He turned toward her finally. Do you understand what you did to me? Adama nodded slowly, her eyes misty. Yes, sir, she whispered. You remembered how to feel. Adama's life shifted in the strangest way. She was still technically a maid, still cleaned, still wore the faded uniform, but she was now something more. Every Friday, the black car arrived. And every Friday, she danced with children who had seen too much pain and too little joy. She became their light. Back at the mansion, the atmosphere began to shift. Chuka Annesley still rarely spoke, but he watched more. Observed more. Staff who once feared his footsteps now caught glimpses of something unbelievable. Was that warmth? He began attending staff meetings. Ordered fresh flowers in the halls. He even approved a piano in the lounge, a request he had rejected for over 10 years. The Ice King was thawing. But not everyone liked the change. One evening, as Adama was returning from the orphanage, she overheard hushed voices in the kitchen. The girl is bewitching him, whispered Florence, the head cook. She dances around like a witch and now he's donating millions? Something's not right. She'll ruin him, said Musa, the head of security. She's just a village girl. How long before she puts her claws in his fortune? Adama walked away, her heart pounding. She had never asked for any of this. She just danced. Later that night, she entered her small room to find an envelope on her bed. No note. Just a wad of cash and a card that said, "It's best if you leave. Before things get ugly." She froze. Her hands trembled. She didn't sleep that night. But the next morning, she was summoned again. To the study. Chuka stood by the window, looking out over the garden. "They're afraid of you," he said without turning. Adama swallowed. "Because I'm poor?" He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "No. Because you changed something they thought was unchangeable." He turned to face her. "Me." She lowered her eyes. "I didn't mean to, sir." "I know. Which is why it worked." There was a long pause. "I want to offer you something," he said finally. "Not money. Not charity. A chance." Adama looked up, confused. "I bought a space in Ikoyi. I want you to run a formal dance school. For children. For girls like you. I'll sponsor it fully, but it'll be yours. Her mouth fell open. Me? But I'm just. You are not just anything, he said, his tone firm for the first time in months. You carry something most people spend their whole lives searching for. Adama's throat tightened. But something inside her whispered, don't trust it too quickly. Why me? She asked. Why now? Chuka's eyes darkened slightly. Because I need to do one good thing before the past catches up with me. Before she could ask what that meant, the door opened sharply. A tall woman in a red suit walked in like she owned the place. Her heels clicked like gunshots on the marble floor. Hello, Chuka, she said, with a voice smooth as poison. Long time. He stiffened. Vanessa. Adama felt invisible again. The woman barely glanced at her. I see you've upgraded your taste and help, Vanessa said with a smirk. Or is she more than that now? Leave her out of this, Chuka said quietly. Vanessa laughed. Still protecting strays. You haven't changed at all. Adama felt the tension like a rope being pulled at both ends. She excused herself quickly, retreating down the hall, her heart racing. But behind her, Vanessa's voice followed like a shadow. I'm not here to ruin your little charity project, she said. I'm here because of the will. Your father's company. The shares you thought you buried, well, guess what? I own them now. Adama paused outside the door, her hand gripping the wall. I'm taking everything, Vanessa hissed. And I want that girl out of this house before the media gets wind of your little maid-turned-muse fantasy. Silence. Then Chuka's voice, cold again. You can take the company. But you won't touch her. Ever. Vanessa laughed again. Oh, Chuka. You really are still that broken little boy looking for someone to save. The mansion, once pulsing with a strange new life, fell back into a grim silence. Vanessa's return had sucked the air from its lungs. Her threat was no bluff. Within days, headlines began swirling. Billionaire heiress claims control over Anazi empire. Who is the young maid seen frequenting Chuka Anazi's office? From scrubbing floors to seducing power? Photos of Adama, blurry, taken without consent, were splashed across tabloids. She was branded a gold digger, a homewrecker, a schemer. And she hadn't done a single thing except dance. Chuka tried to shield her. But the media storm only grew louder. Sponsors began pulling out from the orphanage program. The board of directors threatened a vote of no confidence. The public wanted a villain, and they had chosen Adama. She sat in her small room, scrolling through the hateful comments on her phone. Her fingers trembled. Every word felt like glass against her skin. One morning, she found a letter under her door again, just like last time. But this time, it was handwritten by Chuka. Adama. I never intended for you to suffer for what you gave me. You reminded me what it means to feel, to live. But maybe my world isn't meant for someone like you. I have to end this, before they destroy you completely. If you walk away now, you'll still have your future. I'll understand. See. She sat still for hours, tears streaking her cheeks. Then she rose, packed her tiny bag, and left before sunrise. 2 weeks passed. The mansion felt colder than it ever had. The dance classes were cancelled. The media circus faded only slightly, moving on to newer scandals. But in Chuka's chest, there was a silence louder than any accusation. He wandered into the ballroom one night. The same corridor where he had first seen her dance. And he cried. For the first time since his sister's funeral, he let himself break. Meanwhile, in Ajigunal, Adama had returned to her mother's home. A mud-walled compound with a leaky roof and cracked windows. She had no job now. No fancy car to pick her up. Just silence. Poverty. And the memories of what almost was. But her story didn't end in pain. Because one day, children from the orphanage found her. They had walked 2 miles to reach her home. Auntie Adama, the smallest boy said, holding a folded newspaper. Look. It was an article. Not a tabloid piece. A real article, written by a quiet journalist who had visited the orphanage weeks before. She dances for the forgotten, the maid who taught a billionaire to feel. It spoke of her kindness. Her strength. The real work she had done. And it spread like fire. Donations flooded the orphanage again. Parents asked where they could find her. Women from Lagos to Enugu sent messages, calling her an inspiration. And Chuka? He watched it all quietly. Then, he did something unthinkable. He stepped down. He gave his shares in the company to a trust fund for education and art outreach in underserved communities. He disappeared from boardrooms and headlines. And 1 month later, he appeared again, at a newly constructed building in Nsukka. It was a dance school. And it bore Adama's name. When she walked through its doors, shocked and trembling, she found him there, dressed simply, without bodyguards, holding a single paper in his hand. A contract. No titles. No conditions. Just these words, "This belongs to you. No one can take it away again." Adama looked up at him, her voice small. "Why are you doing this?" He gave her a sad, tired smile. Because love isn't always about possession. Sometimes it's about giving someone wings, even if it means they fly far away from you. She took the paper slowly, her fingers brushing his. She didn't say yes. She didn't say no. But she stayed. The mansion eventually sold. The name Anazi faded from the Fortune 500. But in a small town in Nsukka, barefoot children danced beneath painted murals of stars. Laughter echoed in the halls. And every Friday, a tall man would visit quietly, sitting in the back row as a group of girls twirled across the floor. No cameras. No headlines. Just healing. Because sometimes, the coldest people are the ones who once burned the brightest, until someone reminded them how to feel. And sometimes, the ones who scrub the floors are the ones who rise to teach the world how to stand again. It costs nothing to see the soul inside a person, but it can change everything. True transformation doesn't come from power or money, but from the courage to be vulnerable and the willingness to set someone else free, even if it breaks you to do it.